You're listening to The Creative Imposter, episode 125. Welcome to The Creative Imposter. I'm Andrea Klender, your guide on this exploration of the intersection between creativity and identity. Do you have a sister? Nah, I'm not talking about the sibling you grew up with. I'm talking about a power sister. What's that, you say? Glad you asked. Today's guest, podcaster, conscious productivity coach, and recovering procrastinator Pam Covarrubias, is going to tell you all about it. This is part of our Not Your Typical Self-Care series, and you'll see that Pam has a very specific description of what that is. And it may not be what you would expect from someone who teaches productivity for a living. In a very colorful turn of phrase, we also arrive at the B word we need to include in our self-care regimen, along with the S word and a very unusual F word. Now I've got your attention. What are those words? Well, you'll just have to listen through and see. If you catch one or two or all three, this sort of feels like a contest or a game. In any case, if you catch the B word, the S word, and or the F word, let me know. You can leave a review for this show at ratethispodcast.com/creative. Email me at Andrea@thecreativeimposter.com or DM me on Instagram at thecreativeimposter. I'd love to hear what you think of our little list of terms. And if it turns out you love this episode with Pam and you want to hear more, subscribe to Pam's podcast, Café con Pam, and to my other show, Podcast Envy, where I interviewed Pam more specifically about her show on episode 66. Links to the Power Sisters method, Pam's podcast, Café con Pam, our conversation on Podcast Envy, and all of the ways that you can connect with me and Pam will be conveniently located in the show notes, in the episode description in your app, and at thecreativeimposter.com/125. One quick note about time travel. We recorded this conversation in fall of 2020 and speculated on the future, but still referenced what is now the past for you and me. It's about the election. You'll see. And one more quick note about being a professional podcaster. Pam and I had all sorts of bizarre tech and communication issues in the beginning of our session together, and we were able to both laugh about it and blame it on Mercury retrograde. I left a little bit of that in the beginning of this edit because, well, sometimes I think it's good to keep it real, have some perspective, and be able to laugh at ourselves even when we're professionals. Pam Covarrubias, tech problems, connection issues, mayhem aside, how are you today?
Mercury retrograde. Oh my gosh. Pronunciation issues, all the things.
Communication, technology, what else? What else we got?
What am I doing here yet? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, here we are. Today is Wednesday, right? No, yes, today is Wednesday. We are recording a podcast for The Creative Imposter. You are Pam. Yes. I am Andrea.
I think we're good. We're back to earth.
We're back to earth. And we're talking about self-care today. And we're talking about not your typical self-care. So if I say that phrase to you, not your typical self-care, what comes to mind automatically?
What comes to mind is the usual that we know, right? Like bubble baths, like not to do that, like not bubble baths, not a walk in the park, not like a facial, not a massage.
What's left?
I know. What can we do for self-care? What does come to mind for not your typical self-care is a closed laptop and a put away phone. And early sleep.
That's like a hard one.
9 hours of sleep, which, I mean, people could fight here and be like, oh, I can't function with, that's too much sleep. But I've realized that I cannot function if I get anything less than 7 hours of sleep.
That is also, I think, where I am. What happened is I used to chronically be a less sleep than I should probably be getting person. Unfortunately, I'm one of those creative types that I will often get inspired to do something or create something or start a project at 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will get into this like groove. And then suddenly it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, yes, sleep.
Sleep for sure. And everyone is different. So you are the person that gets inspiration at night. I am too. And I've trained myself to wake up early in the morning because I've also realized that I'm more productive in the morning. I'm creative at night, but I'm productive in the morning, which is a fun dichotomy, right? And so I had to make a decision if I'm going to be productive or am I going to be creative? And so for the weekends, for example, I allow creativity to hit my brain and go to bed late. And in my world, going to bed late is like 11 p.m. Like 1 p.m. is that's just way too late. On a quote, quote, like weekday productive day, I go to bed at like 9 or 10 at the latest. And I'm up at 5 a.m.
Wow.
But I'm so productive in the mornings, not to glorify productivity.
Well, you're able to switch your sleeping schedule between weekends and weekdays?
Yes and no. It does throw me off. So I try not to do that too often. It's better to keep the schedule the same way because otherwise my circadian clock tries to flip to my college days where I would pull all-nighters and, just not sleep at all.
I don't think I slept through most of college.
Right.
You've already been on Podcast Envy. And one of the things we talked about was EFT and tapping. And that is something that you do. And I was thinking about that. And then I realized that there is something else that's a less obvious form of self-care that you also do, which is something called PowerSisters and the PowerSisters method. And so tell me a little bit about what that is and how that came to be.
PowerSisters is an accountability community for recovering procrastinators like me. And it came to be because I'm a recovering procrastinator. And so back in my college days, I realized back then I had an issue with procrastination, which knowing what I know now, it's a whole bunch of limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At the time, I'm like, I'm a procrastinator. I just don't do anything because I put things for tomorrow, And one of the things that I discovered back then is the power of a power sister. So my best friend, Megan, I wanted to run. I wanted to move my body. I wanted to exercise. I was living in this little tiny town in the Midwest in college. There was nothing I could do that I liked that helped me move my body. So Megan was like, let's run. And I was like, what is that? That's boring. I'm a dancer. I've danced my whole life. So running was this foreign thing that I didn't know what to do. And one of the things that happened is that I started running and I kept running because Megan would be there by my side. And when I didn't want to run, she would come knocking on my door with her tennis shoes on. Like, we are running. Because if you're not running, then I'm not running. And if I'm not running, I'm going to feel really, really bad about myself. So we're running. And I would oh my gosh, I would be so annoyed. But I learned the power of accountability because that would get me to get up and do it. And when she didn't want to do it, then I would be like, no, bro, we're running because you got me up the other day. I didn't want to do it. So
Revenge.
We're going.
Revenge.
Right. And so it became this really cool way of supporting each other by accomplishing our goals and being there. And there were, hey, don't get me wrong. There were days when we were like, you know what? We're going to go eat ice cream today because it's been a day. And tomorrow we're going to run longer, right? And so she was my first power sister. Throughout my procrastination recovery journey, I realized that I needed a power sister the whole time. And I'm that person that needs accountability from someone else. Studies have shown that when you have a standing appointment with someone and you tell them what you're going to do, by the next time you have 96% chances of completing that task because you told them you're going to do it. And so we can get into patriarchal beliefs that we are doing things for the other versus us and et cetera, but it works for now. And so Power Sisters is this program that I created where I pair people up with a Power Sister and they get things done together. A reinforcer and a reminder is that they need to do it for themselves, right? Like it's not just because we have a standing appointment. I'm going to see you on Monday at 4. I really need to get the thing done that I promised. No, it's really, why do you want to do what you want to do? And then if you don't want to do it, then own up to it. Take responsibility. And if you don't want to do it because you were feeling, you had a headache, I mean, hey, go lay down, you know?
Did you know that you were going to call it Power Sisters? Like, where did that phrase come from?
It actually, that's a question no one's asked me, which is awesome. I was doing a productivity workshop class, and in the class, I was talking about the power of having an accountability buddy. And so I was telling the story about Megan, and I was like, yeah, she was basically my Power Sister. And it came out, right? And people were like, oh my gosh, I need a Power Sister. That's where I was like, yeah, that's it. That's it. Because it was 2019, it was Power Buddies.
Okay.
And it didn't feel right. So when it just came out of me as Power Sisters, it's Power Sisters, and it stuck.
So the structure is that when you join, you get paired up with one other person. And then what happens from there?
So you fill out a form that tells me about you, because it's not a random combination. It's a intentional combo. And you get paired up typically with someone completely opposite of you. So if I have a task-oriented person, someone who is really focused, then I'm going to pair you up with someone who's not, because there's power in opposites. You can grow and you can learn, and you can learn from each other. Absolutely. And it's happened a lot. I always tell Power Sisters, I'm going to pair you up with your Power Sister, and there's going to be friction. And it's important that there's friction, because you're going to learn how each other works, and you're going to learn how to feed off each other's strengths. Because if I put two people that are the same, it's either going to be a competition the whole time, or you're not going to get anything done. So it's really interesting, because they message me like, 2-3 weeks in, and they're like, yeah, there's friction. And I'm like, okay, keep pushing through it. Keep pushing through it, because the point of having a Power Sister is that you're not best friends. My first Power Sister became my best friend after, but at the time we were simply running buddies. And so once I get paired up, then we meet once a month as a group. They are supposed to meet with each other once a week, and you create your Power Sister meeting. So I walk you through, how is your Power Sister meeting? And I always tell them, your Power Sister meeting is not to catch up. It's not a catch up day. It's a productive meeting. You can keep it as short as 30 minutes if you need to. You cover the main things. Gratitude. What are you grateful for? What lessons did you learn last week? What are your goals or intentions for this week? And how can we support each other? And that's the 4 things that you talk about during your Power Sister meeting. If you become really good friends and you share personal things and you want to talk about them, schedule a different time. Because the important thing is that we stay focused on the intention, which is to accomplish things together. And so they meet once a week. We meet as a group once a month, and we do a lot of fun things, not necessarily related to productivity. A lot of times, the things that we do as a group, we have themes. And for example, this month's theme is Find Your Voice. So there's 2 components of Power Sisters. One is this almost self-development part, and the other one is the productivity. The productivity gets filled with your Power Sister, and the community aspect is what gives you the internal growth.
That's so interesting, because the thing that I was thinking about originally was the community aspect. And then just now when you were talking about there being friction, when I think community for self-care, I think about surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, surrounding yourself with other people who like similar things to you. And, they say in business too, if you're going to run a business and you're going to hire team members, there is a trap that a lot of us get into where we like to hire people who are like us. If we're creative, we like to hire other creative people. And if we're good verbal communicators. We hire other good verbal communicators, and we tend to attract those same people. But I just heard Brene Brown's podcast. She just interviewed Vice President Joe Biden, and she asked him, which I don't know, by the time this comes out, maybe he'll have a different title. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. She mentioned that when he selected Kamala Harris as his running mate for VP, that a lot of people thought that that was strange that he would choose her because there had been friction between them during the primaries. And Brene claims that she actually thought it made perfect sense because looking at his political career, she thought that one of his traits was that he's not afraid to have people on his staff who have a differing opinion, that he doesn't seem to be somebody who just surrounds himself with people who agree with him. And that it made sense that he would hire a running mate that may push back on some things or create friction. I'm wondering if you have any other thoughts that come to mind around this idea of how that word or that concept could be related to self-care, either professionally, creatively, or personally.
I personally love friction. I'm a disruptor by nature. I learned to walk into spaces and start speaking Spanish, for example, or show up into virtual events or even in person and say, my name is Pam Covarrubias, and you're going to learn how to say it because that's my name, you know? and that's something that's in me that I've learned because I didn't have a voice for a long time. Internally. So that's why my goal and intention for my life is to help women find their voice. One way is to develop that with friction, because when you are deferring, whether it's an opinion and lifestyle, et cetera, you have to use your voice to say, no, not quite there where you are. And let's explore why, right? And so when it comes to PowerSisters or even Joe Biden and that friction, I think friction allows for a lot of growth if you're open to it. For example, I have a pair of PowerSisters. One is a total foodie. She will eat the cow flipped over, all the insides, and her PowerSister is fully vegan. And she messaged me and she was like, I don't know if I can do this. She's vegan. And I'm talking about me going churrasqueria, the Brazilian steakhouse. And I can just see her face like melt in pain, and I'm like, okay, that's a great conversation to have. You're not going to change her mind. She's not going to change yours. How could you coexist with each other and still support one another, knowing that you have such opposing opinions? That's growth. And that's part of my disruptor nature, right? That I'm like, yeah, go have a discussion because it's awesome. No, it's difficult for some people. I get it. I don't know. I still think it's part of growth.
So this makes me think about, it's so weird because we're recording this conversation pre-election, but it's going to come out post-election. So
we don't know.
It could be a very different world. We don't really know.
We're living in the past, listeners.
Yes.
By the time they listen.
It does make me think about this conversation that's been happening in our country, specifically in the United States, about how do we get along? Not get along is not even the right word, but like, how do we coexist respectfully and peacefully with people who do have very differing opinions and who push back on our belief systems? And, I run a high school podcasting program, and we were just having this conversation. It came up because the students want to talk about what's been happening this year. And we have all left-leaning liberal students except one.
Oof. And the youth, the way that the youth is talking right now is intense. Like really beautiful.
Yeah, he's a huge fan of Trump. And whenever the conversation starts veering in the direction of politics, I get so nervous because as the adult in the virtual room on Google Meet, I don't want to be the moderator for this conversation where it's 15 against 1. And so we've been having some conversations about how do you have a discussion with somebody when you have two different opinions? Because some people will say like, oh, I'm just blocking everyone. I'm unfollowing everyone on social media, right? My self-care is I'm going to unfollow everyone who irritates me on social media. And then that's going to be good. And then other people are like, no, just go off social media altogether. And then other people are like, no, you need to be having these conversations and these dialogues and engaging. How do you take care of yourself when you're coming up against friction with somebody?
This is where you insert boundaries. I think boundaries are important. And this is where I'm going to quote my mother, because when my parents divorced back in the day, Mexican families, you don't divorce people. You stay in the terrible marriage because that's the way the culture is. And so when my parents separated, we started hearing a lot of things from people saying, oh, you don't have a dad. It's Father's Day. Who's going to come visit you, et cetera, et cetera. And so when we were, as kids, encountering those bullying comments, my mom said, you have a choice. We cannot control how people are going to react to things. You have a choice on how you are going to react. So you're either going to give them your power or you're going to take it back and walk away. So going back to your question, we need to set the line. What's the boundary? I'm going to take it up to here. And if you're not willing and open to have a conversation, then I'm going to draw the line and walk away because it's not worth my time.
Yeah.
The moment we stop growing together, then it's an argument. And I don't have time for arguments. The moment we are having a dialogue, it's growth, right? I have these conversations with my partner all the time. We're completely opposite. I'm the extrovert. I'm 80% extrovert. He's 80% introvert. So just to give you like how opposite we are. And we talk about really opposing things all the time. And the moment we know that your adrenaline is getting higher because you're like, we're not then we get to, okay, we're not understanding each other. This is time to stop this conversation. Let's cool it down and revisit when we're ready. So boundaries are important, and choosing when it's time to walk away.
Yeah.
Because it's not a competition. It's about growth. So if we're going to step into the friction, what's our bar? And then the moment we reach that limit, then it's like, okay, I'm done growing. Thank you very much. Going back to my house. So boundaries, choices, and then insert the friction.
And now it's time for our mid-episode stretch break. This is the self-care series. After all, take a moment to shrug those shoulders up by your ears. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Let them really come up. Make your neck as short as humanly possible. Take a deep breath in and hold. And exhale, drop your shoulders. One more time. Squeeze those shoulders up by the ears. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Create resistance. Take a deep breath in and hold. And exhale, let them drop. Wiggle your fingers. Move your wrists in some circular and serpentine type motions. And now reach those arms up overhead. Reach high to the sky. Stretch the palms of your hands. Stretch your fingers wide. Take a deep breath in. As you exhale, turn your thumbs to face forward, your palms out to the sides, and reach those arms out, out, out as far as you can. Take up space and slowly bring those arms out and down alongside you. Don't you feel better already? And now I'd like to invite you to take better care of yourself by joining in some quality conversation with me and other cultural creatives who are building genuine, real-life connections in the online space of all places. Here are 2 opportunities to engage with us. Number 1, for creative professionals who podcast, I'm gathering a group of about 6 to 10 of us for the Podcast Envy Pro Pod. There is almost nothing better than talking shop with people who get what you're up to with your show and yet have different areas of expertise and insight and perspective to bring to the table. I know I have grown leaps and bounds in my production prowess and business success through conversations I've had with colleagues in the space. This is your chance. Membership is $99 a month, and we are waiting for you to get started. Learn more and apply at thecreativeimposter.com/podcast envy pro, or book a 20-minute call with me and see if it's a good fit. at thecreativeimposter.com/T420. That's TEAFOR20. And way number 2 for you to connect into the conversation. And this is for all creative beings listening to this episode. In case you were wondering, that's you. The Creative Imposter Collective is an online hub for multidisciplinary creatives who champion each other's work-life goals. We host twice weekly Zoom sessions to share our goods, gripes, and goals for the week. We swap show, book, podcast recommendations, and more. And you can join for free at thecreativeimposter.com/community. See you there. So the other part of the Power Sisters that you brought up that I hadn't really thought of was the productivity part. And in the very beginning of our conversation, and I asked you what is not your typical self-care, you said a closed laptop and a turned off phone, which feels like the opposite of productivity. So talk to me a little bit about this relationship. And I have a feeling it has to do with the B word again, but this relationship around productivity and how productivity can be part of our self-care or an obstacle in our self-care.
Absolutely. I think productivity, just like anything else, when it comes in extremes, could be harmful. And so the closed laptop and the turned off phone, instead of the B word, I'm going to use the S word. And the S word is space. And so what a closed laptop and a turned off phone creates is space. Because a lot of times the metaphor, and I live for iterations and metaphors and stuff, but productivity could be like holding a bird and holding it very tight because we want to get things done. And we're so in it. We're holding it and we're trapping it. And that little bird is trying to breathe and it can't, right? But the moment we give it space and we say, okay, brain, let's say that our brain is that bird. The moment we give it space, we allow that bird to breathe, then our brain can come up with better ideas, can come back with a fresh perspective. And so being glued to your chair, to your computer, to your phone, doesn't necessarily equal productivity. And the walking truth of that, because I've spent hours upon hours glued to my computer. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, what did I do today? What really just happened, right? And so being mindfully productive and consciously productive does not involve sitting at your desk or in front of your computer for 20 hours. You could be super productive in 20 minutes, as long as you do it focused and conscious of what the purpose and the goal is that you need to get done. And so I do it started as a social experiment, and now I just do it every year. I take my niece and nephew once a year for a month because someone on my podcast told me that moms are 60% more productive than non-moms. And I was like, I call this BS because I study productivity all the time and I'm very productive. And she's like, no, moms are very productive. So I called my sister and I'm like, sister, send me your kids. She gladly did it, right? Any mom, you say, I'll take your kids for a month, of course. And so, I mean, obviously someone you trust. Yeah. And so the kids came for a month. I became 60% more productive. And every summer now the kids come and I become 60% more productive. And the reason behind that is because I know I only have 2 hours of work in my day.
Yeah.
And so it's not that magically the kids come and sprinkle some productivity magic, but it's because I am conscious of the amount of time that I have. So when I have the kids, I know that I have 2 hours of work, 1 hour before they wake up, 1 hour after they go to bed. And so I do all the things in that 1 hour, and I'm conscious, I'm focused, I'm determined to get the most important priorities of the day. So going back to the closed laptop, turned off phone, it's really being mindful of what it is that you're sitting down to do. And then if we're going to play on YouTube, I mean, hey, but know that you are playing on YouTube.
Do you assign yourself a power sister? Do you have multiple power sisters in your life? As the facilitator of the group overall, where does that fit into your world?
I have like 6 power sisters. Absolutely. I have power sisters. I have to have power sisters. And also your power sister relationship, it starts in a certain way, right? We have our weekly meetings and then it evolves to maybe a weekly text. Hey, checking in. What's your priority today? Because you just become much more effective at what you do. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'll ever stop having power sisters.
Do you think it's helpful to, I want to say like tag new people in? Because I know for me, like sometimes when I have, another person who is maybe more entrepreneurial and we start out as colleagues, right? And we start out with productivity meetings and work meetings, and then we get to know each other better and we become more friends. And then our meetings become more social and then they become longer. And then sometimes it feels like hard to get back to that structure that you've created. And I wonder if it's useful to, over time, bring new people onto your Power Sister team.
For sure. I've done it. I've had Power Sisters where again, going back to me disrupting, I have no problem having hard conversations. And so when it's time to refresh. And so, for example, I had a Power Sister team. It was 4 of us. We would meet once a week. Every Monday morning, we would meet, go over goals, and it got to the point where we weren't being productive anymore. And so we decided that it was time to dissolve the group. And it's better to dissolve the group than have tension among the group. And then you're doing the opposite of doing things. You're just angry and resentful and wasting your time, Yeah. And so I have another Power Sister who also became my mentee. So we were growing together and then she stalled and I kept growing and our Power Sister meeting became a coaching meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, okay, listen, my friend, this is not reciprocal anymore. It has to be equal. Your Power Sister has to be your peer because otherwise then it becomes a mentor-mentee relationship or a coaching-coachee relationship. And then you got to charge for that.
Yeah. And I imagine, as somebody who does coaching and mentoring, that's really easy for you to slide into that role. People like feel that from you. They're like, damn, I don't realize I'm doing this, but help me out here.
Yes. And so insert boundaries again, right?
Yeah.
Like having that awareness that, okay, do I still feel that we are both growing together, or do I feel that every meeting, it's all about you and me telling you what to do or asking questions? Then it's no longer reciprocal and we need to reevaluate. And there's no harm in saying, this is not working anymore. I love you as a person. Let's go to happy hour once a month. But our Power Sister meeting, it's not working. I'm wasting my time.
I do want to also ask you about, as we're debunking some self-care myths on this series as well, you had mentioned, you called it an unpopular opinion around affirmations.
Yes.
Tell me about affirmations and where you stand on this self-care tool.
Yes. So I have the unpopular opinion that I don't like affirmations because as an EFT practitioner, in tapping, we use affirmations to find your limiting beliefs. When you tell me what affirmations you're repeating every day, I will tell you what you don't believe in. So I want to make sure that we understand that as a practitioner of this tool that I use, with the affirmation, we can uncover truly what's stopping you from getting what it is you're affirming. Example, I am abundant. Or what's the one that people talk about all the time? Money comes easily and freely to me.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, that's everywhere. Then my question is, why hasn't it? Or truly, we can tap about it and really see the root of why you want money to come easily and freely and why is it not? Because you don't need to affirm that you're breathing because you're breathing. It's a fact, right? I don't need to affirm that I can read because I can read. And I know it, right? But the moment I have to tell myself something to believe it, I know it's not true. So instead of repeating something that's not true, let's work on what's making it not true.
That makes sense, Pam, because I feel like that's the main thing of why I also don't like affirmations, because it feels so fake to me.
Right.
One time somebody gave me this series of CDs if you want to timestamp it, date it. You didn't even need to say the affirmations. It was called Self-Talk. Self-Talk by Shad Helmstetter, I think. And you just listen to them. And he is repeating the affirmations. And part of the process is him saying it in second person, like money comes freely and easily to you. And some of it is him saying it in first person. And there's a psychological reason why that is. I don't remember. But I was driving in my car listening to this CD and it made me laugh out loud. Like I had to almost pull over because it was like, I never work for money. Money works for me. And I was just like, I cannot, like, come on.
Yeah. And look, there's been studies that show that affirmations work, right? And how long does it take for the affirmation to work? If we are trying to program the subconscious with an affirmation, it's going to take a long time for the affirmation to collapse what it is that is true for us. So why don't we just go to the root and collapse what it is true? And then the affirmation won't even have to be an affirmation because it's already true. Like reading, like breathing, like, you know, I know people are going to fight here.
Okay. If you would like to fight about this position, please, please DM me on Instagram at The Creative Imposter. Or tag Cafe con Pam with Pam Covarrubias. No, please don't fight us on social media. We can have a discussion where there is growth.
Have an open conversation. Yeah.
We cannot have an argument about this.
Because, you know, when the argument begins, we're going to walk away. I don't have time for that.
So give us some nuts and bolts. So for the listener who is thinking like, yes, I need to have a power sister. Obviously, the most direct, easy way to do this is to go to your website, which is
findmypowersister.com.
Findmypowersister.com and sign up and do it together with this group, with this structure. But other than that, just in general, if somebody knows that they want to find somebody who is that accountability partner for them, how would they go about that?
Number one, it can't be your friends. So cross out of all your friends. Cross them off the list because you already have some camaraderie. You already have some love for each other. You already care about each other and your meetings are not going to be objective. And there's already, you know, history. So it can't be your friends. 2, sorry, my dog is everywhere, you know.
I was like, who's walking around back there?
Yeah. Number 2, they have to be your peers. So someone who is either at your same level of growth, whichever growth you're looking for. So 3, identify what you want to work on. So you can have a finance power sister, someone that you're looking to pay off debt, maybe someone that you're looking to get things done. It could be a productivity power sister. It could be a cleaning. I mean, it could be whatever you want to change in your life, but you want to have a similar goal, right? So for example, I had a power sister at some point that we both wanted to increase the revenue in our business.
Okay.
And so every meeting was very specific. That's part of the focus and the intention. Every meeting was very specific. Then it switched a little because I wanted to talk more about social media. And is that really going to really grow things? Find someone who is looking to grow in the same way. And then where do I find them, right? Because that's the question that I would like, where do I find my power sister? I have found power sisters networking. I have found power sisters in conferences. I have found power sisters through friends and losing the fear of asking people. It's important, right? One time I was in a conference, literally, I met this girl. We clicked, got really cool with each other. And at the end of the conference, this is a 5-day conference. So at the end of the conference, we ran into each other again. And she was like, hey, we need to exchange information. Let's talk, keep talking, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, do you just want to be my power sister? And she was like, what is that? And so I went on to explain, right? We have a weekly meeting. We set goals together. We have the same growth mentality, same growth intention, and we move forward together. And so she became a power sister. She still to this day is my power sister. So it's not that hard.
It's not that hard. You can do it.
Just ask.
I would just love to know, Pam, how are you really being proactive about taking care of yourself in the next few months?
I'm looking to find a nice dance of harmonious things to do. This sounded very romantic, but really what I'm looking to do is also to be realistic, right? Because the winter months bring this, like, I just want to stay in bed and watch movies. So we're going to be mindfully productive, and we are also going to practice self-care. Then am I going to be productive on Mondays and then give myself permission to rest on Tuesday? Am I going to be productive in the mornings and then rest in the afternoons? It's really understanding, what is your dance? How am I going to balance this? Balance doesn't exist, but how am I going to dance of productivity and self-care? Because also productivity could be self-care, because it gives me sometimes a sense of purpose. With all the craziness that's happening in the world, drafting an email and sending it out is the best thing I could do in the day. So dance the dance.
The title for this episode, Practice Self-Care, Draft an Email and Send It Out. That's not really the title for this episode.
Have your sense of purpose. Done.
Is there anything else that you want to share with us before we say goodbye?
Thank you. No, this was great. I hope I didn't push too many buttons with the affirmation stuff. I know affirmations are near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, but let's be real. It's fun for me to push the button in a very nice and gentle, caring way. Thank you for having me.
What would a podcast be without a little friction?
Right? Yes.
I don't know about you, but that was so much fun for me. Did you catch the B word, the S word, and the F word for self-care? I'd love to hear about it. I'd also love to see you in one of our online communities. You can find the links to join our Podcast Envy Pro Pod for creative professionals who podcast, and the Creative Imposter Collective for creatives who just want to connect for some great conversations around goods, gripes, and goals in the show notes at thecreativeimposter.com/125. And if what you really need is some accountability, yeah, that's not me, definitely check out Pam's PowerSister's method. We've linked that up for your convenience too. Thank you to Edwin Ruiz for mixing our show, to Lisa Witter for these show notes that I keep mentioning over and over and over again. Can you tell I really want you to go there and check them out? And to Jovia Armstrong for our theme music. I thank you so much for listening. And this week I'm getting curious. When can you close your laptop? And when can you turn off your phone? And how does that feel?